welcome to the Metapod, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. I've been a little off, I guess, this past week. Sean, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good, Jake. I'm good. I'm just chilling. Played a lot of Pokemon last week.
Oh,
Again.
really?
Yeah. I played some Chen Pao. I brought
Mm-hmm.
Chen Pao to I thought it was like a regular, like just locals. And then I get there because my friend recommended it, and I get there and we both were surprised. It was just a league challenge, and we're like, there was 29 people at this league challenge, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
That's bonkers numbers for a league challenge.
I have seen on social media, Sean, you're not on Twitter or I guess
On
X.
X.
Yeah, on X, but whatever you decide to call it, I was seeing a lot of people posting about challenges, cups, and things like that over the weekend, and it just feels like overall attendance is way higher than it used to be. Because I remember over in Indianapolis, Indianapolis, a bustling city, right? A lot of players, a lot of people in general, so usually, especially with like Gen Con over there, like lots of people just interested in card games, probably. And I remember going to league challenges where there were only like 5, 6, 7 people on the usual, and it would be like a weekend or it'd be like a night on a weekday. And now, I mean, I've been to a couple challenges so far in the last month, probably like 3 or 4 challenges or something like that. And every time, I mean, it's double digits. It's double digits here in Central Kentucky, which I don't think is as big of a scene, although a good scene. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Not as big of a scene as when I lived in Indy. So I think attendance is just up in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a combination of the return of these types of local events and a new season. So like this will be the first season in like 4 years or something like that, 3 or 4 years.
First full season.
Yeah, first full season with locals and everything. People are trying to get their head start. A lot of hype. So I mean, we'll see where it's at come January and February. I think the winter always it depends on like how people have been doing, but I remember the same things as you in downtown Manhattan, like midtown Manhattan. League challenge on a Thursday night, 7 people. Like that's it's weird.
And now you're quadruple.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, so many people. I was not prepared for this.
Like really fight for points right now, and everybody's always asking about the kicker. Like, did we get the top 8 points kicker?
Right.
Like
it's
that kind
wild.
of thing.
But Jake,
I will say, I also competed in a challenge thinking that it was a normal league night. And I played the Palkia Curlia deck that we showcased.
Yes, how did it do?
There, it was good. I mean, I went 2-3, so not very great, but I think there was Chin Pals everywhere. Oh my God, Sean, I cannot tell you. I don't know why my local scene is all over Chin Pao right now, and it's just absolutely absurd. But anyways, I think there were a lot of good things about the deck, and I think I could have probably had a better record. I just didn't have like really any practice with it. Because there were a couple times where I thought about like different lines of play after the fact, and I was like, oh yeah, that definitely should have been the thing. But I beat a Rapid Strike Urshifu and Teleon with the deck, which I feel like is a bad matchup. So I'll take it.
All those damage counters on your little Curlias in the back.
Yeah, on the little Curlias, Yoga Loop is always live, it feels like, and it's just absolutely wild. But I think I made some good plays, and I think I did really well despite I think I did pretty decently despite not really having played the deck before. Just showcasing it on the Metapod and watching Azul play it a little bit on the Dude stream, and then just going out and playing 5 rounds in a challenge.
Yeah,
5 rounds. It was crazy.
It's like a mini regional, except it wasn't best of 3. But
it wasn't best of 3. I played in a best of 3 cup.
Yeah. Oh, for the whole cup was best of 3, not just
top 8?
Yeah,
the whole cup. The whole cup was best of 3. This was this might have been not this past weekend, so it was before last week's episode. I played in a cup. I didn't do like super well. I went like I just went O2 drop because if you go O2,
you're not gonna make top 8.
yeah, you're not gonna make top 8, and it wasn't like we were gonna go for top 16 points. So I just decided, you know what, bail out, leave, because I had to drive 45 minutes to get home. I was like, I might as well just head out now. But anyways, yeah, that best of 3, it was cool because like I mean I played in NAIC, but like again, just trying to always make sure about the time and stuff like that. And I was playing Chin Pao, and I played against Gardevoir in my first round, and we played a full 3 games. And it wasn't like they were wipeouts or anything like that. Like no donks. We just, my opponent and I were very mindful of the time, and we just we scooped. And there was maybe one game where I could have scooped earlier, but I don't think it would have decided anything else differently in terms of the third game, because the third game they took all the prizes they needed to win. So just play faster, people. That's what I tell you. But anyways, Sean, that is out the window because this week, I am focused on Obsidian Flames because, Sean, do you plan on going to any pre-releases that are happening this weekend? It's the first weekend coming up of pre-releases for Obsidian Flames. Do you plan on going to any?
Yeah, there's going to be one. I need to actually DM the people to reserve a spot. But yeah, Sunday afternoon, I'll probably go to one. And I may go to another one or two. We'll see. But I definitely think I'm going to go to one on Sunday afternoon. But it's weird, Jake, because I mean, this is me showing my colors. It's also Commander Masters pre-release weekend. So if you play, if everyone else out there also has a cardboard addiction problem and plays Magic as well, I actually hate how close the pre-releases are getting between Magic and Pokemon now. Like they're like every time it's like always the same weekend or so. It's annoying. Someone needs to like connect these two people at both companies and just be like, hey, could you not?
Hey,
could you not?
Stop it. Creatures and Wizards of the Coast meet up.
The creatures and the wizards need to get together and have a tribunal about when they're going to do their stupid events. Anyways.
I think I plan on going to one, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to this weekend. It all depends on my schedule, because my schedule is going to start getting busy here soon. So, gonna try to maybe get it in next weekend, but we'll give you all the deets on how Sean did in his pre-release kit, and then I'll give you another one. But today's topic and discussion is going to be, you may have seen it in the title, in the notification, in the thumbnail, whatever, Obsidian Flames. So Sean, did you know that there was actually an Obsidian Flames like ETB booklet set leak that came out last week?
So I know that some of the YouTubers out there, not ourselves included, but some of the YouTubers out there were getting their early ETBs.
Yes.
And yeah, my guess is that one of them opened their ETB to film their video and most likely just leaked the booklet. So
I don't know if it was a content creator, but
who knows? But like, I do know that the booklets are now out there in some people's hands.
Yes. It was funny because Andrew Mahone got his before Ruler of the Black Flame, one of the Japanese sets that is included in whatchamacallit, Obsidian Flames, that is turned into Obsidian Flames. He got his free ETB and booster box from the Pokemon Company before the set released in Japan. And he was talking, and he was showing it on stream, and he was talking like, do you know how much power I have in my hand right now? Like, he was like, I have the set list booklet before it even releases in Japan. It was really, really cool. And I really like this move that Pokemon has done to not only like continue supporting content creators and like in their openings and stuff, which, by the way, I think the openings that all the content creators can do is July 28th. So mark that in your calendars. Because that's when you're going to see all the cards and stuff and opening videos. But anyways, I think it's really cool how they're starting to align things and stuff like that, and how they've kind of aligned this set, pre-release weekend is just like, I think Ruler of the Black Flame released last week. Or maybe it
Maybe.
releases this week. It's
Yeah.
very close. And we talked about it last week, how I don't think it's ever been this close
No.
together in terms of TPC and TPCI release schedules.
Yeah, it will be interesting because, like, I think we might have mentioned it last week, or I was talking to somebody, but our format with Obsidian Flames will be unique,
Hmm.
actually, because not just because they're coming out relatively at the same time, but because our format won't have 151 for another month or so.
Hmm.
So any list, anybody who says, "Oh, this list in Japan, this list in Japan, that," always a grain of salt because Japan already had 151.
Yeah, they've been
And
playing with 151 for a while now.
yeah. So this is we have 1 month of being completely special, Jake. The rest of the world is special for once.
But it's going to be interesting too, because there's going to be a lot of people, not myself, but maybe a lot of other people that will be trying to compete for the world championships, which does not include
Yeah.
Obsidian Flames. So there's just a lot of cards being thrown left and right, and to consider, to not consider, and ways to play. So it's an interesting time to be a Pokemon fan right now. But Sean, let's not waste any more time. Let's start getting into the Obsidian Flames
Set
list and
review.
talk about the different cards and stuff. Yeah, so Sean, if you don't mind, what is kind of the first card that you want to talk about?
The first card I'm actually looking through because I don't actually typically read through
Hmm.
everything. But you know what? I will call out this Blossom real quick. I'm like
Hmm.
looking at it. Typically, stage twos, like there's the potential for something interesting. And it does have an interesting attack. It says one grass energy, but you would never have one grass energy attached to this Blossom. And it does powerful dance 90 times. You flip a coin for each energy attached to the Pokemon, and it does 90 damage for each heads. I call this out because 90 times is enormous, Jake. That is insane.
Hmm.
Um, so look, I am not entirely sure how you build this deck, but it's certainly like you have to get lucky with this deck because it's coin flips. Uh, but it's if you were to play something like a fortress deck that gets a lot of
Cherim.
energy. Yeah, Cherim is great actually. Cherim because you're already doing now a stage 1 and then a stage 2, whatever. But you also got Gardenia's Vigor.
Hmm.
Not a bad card. Maybe looking for a home. Um, yeah, 90 times damage is nothing to scoff at, I would say. If it was 60 times, then I'd be like, ugh. So to do a one hit KO on, say, a three, like the new Charizard EX, right?
Hmm.
Um, the one that's fire, not dark. Dark is weak to grass. So it's a whole separate issue.
Well, I don't know. Is the Charizard? Oh no, I think it would be weak to
Yeah.
grass or something.
But
Yeah. Anyways.
say a 330 HP buddy. If it was only
Hmm.
60 times, well, shoot, you got to flip 6 heads. That's just too much to ask for. Because what are you going to do? Throw 9 energy on this Blossom? No.
And even then, I mean, you still only have like what, a 66% chance or something like that or
Right.
whatever.
It's not
Well,
great.
I will say though, 60 times was in a previous
Yes.
Pokemon recently, the Maractus from Sword and Shield base set, except that was one grass and one colorless.
Hmm.
So you had to attach multiple energies. And this is each energy attached to this Pokemon, right? So you can have double turbo energies. I know that kind
That's
of
true.
messes with your math a little bit, but any
Eh,
like 2x energy attached to this Pokemon works out. And so you could maybe gameplay and get a whole bunch of energies going on the Blossom. So it's always fun to hit like that. We'll see if we get a coin flip kind of card like the one stadium Glimwood Tangle or the Victini that let you reflip coins or something like that. We'll see if we get that in the future, Sean.
Jake, what is your first card?
I will say the first card that I want to talk about, it's right above the beautiful, gorgeous, absolutely distinguished Comia Rowlet over there. It is the Trevenant that is in this set. Trevenant is a stage 1 grass Pokemon that evolves from Phantom 140 HP, and it's utilized, I would say, mostly because of its ability. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, put 1 damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon during Pokemon checkup. So, with this little guy, you can try to maybe fix some math and things like that during the Pokemon checkup phase, putting damage counters on your Pokemon. It's not as strong as I would say I think it was Unbroken Bonds Wheezing. I can't remember what set exactly it's from, but it's Sun and Moon era Wheezing, where that was put a damage counter on like all of your opponent's Pokemon
I
that
remember
already
that.
had a damage counter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just a memory, a distant memory in comparison to this card, but it's beautiful. It looks good. I like the ability. I want to know if it'll have something alongside it. I know some people were talking about some other Pokemon that we may get into later, but I like Trevenant. I think it's cool. I just wish it was maybe like a bunch of different Pokemon instead of just, the active, but
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean, I will say one damage counter on your opponent's active during checkup it's just poison. That's literally all it is.
I mean, it's really just poison, yeah.
Now you
So
can
you can
stack
get
this.
poison on there, you can get Sneasler on there, you can get that damage counter on there. You can get a good hefty amount of damage counters, and if you can find some sort of like what am I thinking of? Like Shedinja from Lost Thunder, I think it is, that if you attached it to a Pokemon, your opponent would take 1 less prize on that Pokemon. So if you can get some sort of like stall or denial deck going, like if they had a Shedinja reprint with this Trevenant and you just boosted up the poison, maybe I could maybe see it. We have a lot of recovery in this format with Miriam, Super Rod, things like that. So it could happen.
You know what I'm actually thinking about too? I always come back to this because there's going to be somebody who breaks this deck in a proper way. But Fortress, right? The Fortress Iono combo, right? Right now, we all think about Wo-Chien as the main partner, which is fair. Like, Wo-Chien is great. But if you were able to get your opponent down to, say, 2 prizes, and you have this Trevenant, that attack, it's 100 damage, and the defending Pokemon can't retreat. And unless you're playing against a Lost Box deck, right, that's going to be playing lots of switching cards that they could draw into, there's a high likelihood your opponent may only run 1 or 2 switching cards in their deck in this format. And so it doesn't actually matter if your opponent draws into something that like could do something, but they have something stuck in the active that they can't do anything with. Then, I could see this being a partner for that too. But, it's, again, I'm not quite sure, but maybe.
John, what other card are you thinking about next?
Well, Jake, you know what? I'll just give you the shout out for the Rowlet. I know you always want to talk about the Rowlet.
Oh God, it's such a great Rowlet. I mean, I love Rowlet. Favorite Pokemon for anyone that doesn't know, and it's by Komiya, one of my favorite illustrators, Tomokazu Komiya. Just a very super distinct, lovely, beautiful art style that has so many different cool cards throughout Komiya's like vast tenure in the Pokemon trading card game. So very excited to add this little guy in my collection.
But the next one that I want to talk about is the first EX of the day, is Decidueye EX. Decidueye EX, it is a stage 2, which already you're okay. You're going to set it's a problem to begin with.
Not impossible.
Not impossible. 320 HP grass type Pokemon, so a little beefier than the average, not than 310. Its ability, Total Freedom. Once during your turn, you may use this ability. If this Pokemon is on your bench, switch it with your active Pokemon. Or if this Pokemon is in the active, switch it with your bench. I do like that the ability isn't just go into the active, but it's kind of basically like either go into the active or go onto the bench. It's just a free retreat, effectively. And you can effectively double retreat with this, too. So you could retreat and then use this ability if you needed to. So any decks that are doing things like locking you in the active or damaging you like with poison or burn, you can kind of just get out of it for free. And then its attack for a grass and a colorless called Hunting Arrow does 130. This attack also does 30 to one of your opponent's benched. I'm going to say that is pretty weak. I wanted to mention this, though, because, 130, 30, and the ability of, like, moving in or out of the active. Like, in the past, Decidueye plus other cards have, like, had those abilities, and they've been semi-strong in various formats. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, as a stage 2 especially, it feels very underwhelming. But I want to get your take, Jake.
It's very interesting when we just got a stage 2 grass Pokemon in Meowscarada that has an ability that places damage counters and then has an attack that does almost the same amount of damage as this base wise, but then has a bonus that basically doubles and hits for over 200, I think, if the Pokemon already has damage counters on it. So I don't really see much reason to play Decidueye EX, unfortunately, in my eyes. But I think if you want to play a grass stage 2 deck, I mean, just play Meowscarada. I mean, at least you can set up combos in there. You can have a little bit of flexibility. You can knock out the stinkers in the deck. Where Decidueye, you're just chilling.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was worth mentioning. I know Decidueye's had a lot of good cards in the past, and the abilities here on their surface have been useful, but this one, not so much, I don't think.
It's different from like Black and White. So like Keldeo had the Russian.
Yep.
I think it was called Russian. Where if it was on the bench, you could move it up to the active once per turn. So it's just, if it was a basic Decidueye EX, okay, maybe it would just be used for that, specific ability. But the fact that it's a stage 2 is just too much set up. But Sean, I really quickly want to talk about one of the things that I've noticed, and we'll talk more and more about it in Obsidian Flames, that I think is really, really cool, is the like new unique attacks. Sometimes we'll talk about the same attacks, like the what was that Pokemon? Blossom having the same attack as Maractus in the past. Decidueye kind of having, similar attack as it has in the past. Serena, if you could go down to Serena real quick. This first attack is the one that I want to talk about. Serena is a stage 2 grass Pokemon, 160 HP. Its first attack for a grass energy is called Queen's Heal, 60 damage. Now, that may not seem anything, but during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't be evolved by playing a card from your opponent's hand. And that is not something I feel like, I just want to call this out because this is one, really, really cool. It's a really cheap effect. I mean, yeah, it's a stage 2, but I think it's very balanced. But it's really, really cool, in my opinion, to see an effect like this where we don't really have any other evolution, I feel like, right now, besides evolving from hand. I mean, all we have is like Boost Shake, but nobody's playing Boost Shake because it ends your turn. And outside of turn 1, it's not really ideal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just kind of wanted to call this out because this is just like a really, really cool effect that, who knows, maybe you can see, like, if you have like a stage 2 deck already, or a deck that's like already playing rare candies, maybe like a 101 line or something like that, where you can maybe even like a Meowscarada, right?
Yeah.
You have a Meowscarada, you put the 3 damage counters on a Frigibax, like, let's say, or something like that. You put 3 damage counters on a Frigibax, and then you can boss it up and like use Queen's Heal to knock it out. Or you could just boss it up, use Queen's Heal, and then what are they going to do? Can they evolve it? I mean, they have to find a switch card or something of the sort. But it's just like a really cool effect.
Yeah, I think especially the prevalence of Arceus decks. I think this, it is a stage 2, and the only way that you can counter the Arceus is if you evolve.
If you go first.
If you go first, do a turn 2, and do the rare candy, and get the attack off. So, you're already playing with fire a little bit with that strategy. But, look, if you can pull it off, and your opponent just, the Arceus decks typically also only play 1, maybe 2 switching cards. So unless they look, they can manually retreat. That's the other awkward bit, right? So,
Mhm.
but if they're retreating, that means that they're getting
They're
rid
getting
of.
rid of energies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, not a bad thing. So, like, hey, you can evolve, but I'm going to take a turn off. You're going to take a turn off with this. So, I don't know what this pairs with because I like, cool, you stopped me for the turn, but eventually I'm going to get there. So, like, what do you do on top of this? But I agree. Like, it's a really cool effect that I almost would have loved to see a version of this. And maybe it exists somewhere and we just never noticed it. But I would love to see a version on a basic, like a
Mhm.
basic that has a 1 energy attack, but it does no damage, maybe. Right?
I think if it was a basic, maybe it would be 1 energy if it had no damage, but um I feel like it's got to be like a grass and a colorless, or like a colored energy and a colorless, to be balanced on a basic Pokemon at least.
That's fair. But I would have loved to see that because then you could start seeing it sprinkled into a lot of decks, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because
But
then you're
Sean,
like,
what's
okay,
oh,
yes, we'll
sorry.
go. Well, no, we'll go on. We'll move on.
I was going to say, what do you want to talk about next?
I mean, the next one, I'll just talk about the Toad Scroll. The Toad
Oh
Scroll
yeah.
EX. It is a stage 1 EX. So, haha, you're already beating the others. For 270 HP grass type. If you're not wildly familiar with the new jellyfish, this is a land jellyfish. So,
Mhm.
270 HP. It has an ability, Protective Filament. Prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to all of your Pokemon that have energy attached. Um, that is pretty huge. It doesn't prevent damage. It's very clear on that. But let's say you are playing against a Lost Box deck, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know what's on your bench, but hey, Sableye is a problem. Just straight up.
I
Sableye's a
mean,
problem.
you're evolving, so you're gonna have probably a uh to what's the shoot?
Tentacruel.
Tenta
No,
no,
no, I don't even know. It's not in the set.
shoot,
So
what's his name? I forgot his name. Anyways, you're gonna have the little basic Pokemon in there, which is what, like 70 HP or
yeah.
whatever. So, and you'll probably have a Manaphy then as well. And so Toadscruel, I mean, is probably gonna play a lot of those little dudes that that Sableye and Lost Box is gonna love.
Yeah. So like it's a pretty cool like little card there that just shuts off primarily Sableye. I think that's the main one. Uh
It's also a card that can be anywhere on the field. It doesn't need to be in the active to
oh,
for
that's
the
very
ability
true.
to take effect.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's very true. And then the attack on this guy, because maybe it matters, is two
Hmm.
grass, colony rush, 80 plus damage. It does 80 plus 40 for each of your bench Pokemon with a grass energy, which, with the ability, assuming you're playing a grass deck to begin with, you want all your Pokemon to have an energy attached so that they get the benefit of this ability. So, assuming you got a full bench, that would be doing
280.
280. That's
Yeah, that's a
huge.
really good number.
That's honestly,
That's a
I didn't.
really good number when you have
Hmm.
Fortress in the format, Sean.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought. I hadn't looked at this before. This is the first time I'm seeing it. I don't think there are any other Pokemon right now that do a clean 280. I really don't
Giratina.
think it exists. Oh, Giratina. That's right. You're right.
Yeah, Giratina
Okay.
V-Star.
Giratina V-Star does do it. But you know what Giratina V-Star needs? To discard energy into the Lost Zone.
Yes. Yeah, it needs to put energies in the Lost Zone to use its attack.
And it needs two different types of energy. So,
Hmm.
I mean, if you're talking about the clean 280, which is kind of the perfect number for a V-Star dominated format, whew, you throw you know what, Jake? You throw a cleansing gloves on there. That's your Gardevoir knockout.
I will definitely be building this deck. I will love this deck because it just to correct ourselves in terms of the names, Toad School
Toad
is the
School.
little baby. Yes, I have a set of Japanese sleeves of Toad School running, and so I'm definitely sleeving up Toad School. I'm sleeving up that deck, and I'm using those sleeves, Sean.
Okay,
Definitely, most definitely.
Jake, what is your next card?
I think the next card that I want to talk about in here,
I mean, I can tell
I
you what
think
it should be.
I'm gonna say Entei first.
Oh, you're gonna skip
What are you?
The Scovillain.
Yeah, I mean the Scovillain. I mean just for everyone who knows, it's a stage 1 Pokemon with 110 HP, which is a really bad number right now in the format. It is
Yeah.
both grass and fire type, so you hit for both grass and fire weakness, but there's not a lot, I guess, that have a grass and or fire weakness. So
I
it's
mean,
like
Umbreon VMAX.
I mean, I guess, yeah, Umbreon VMAX, but you're only hitting for 110, so you're hitting 220, so you're not hitting for knockout.
true.
Toad Scroll EX, it's weak to fire, but you're not hitting a one-hit knockout.
True.
I just don't, and it costs a grass colorless to use the attack. I don't think it's that good, Sean.
I mean, it's probably not great, but I'm like, hey, if Zorobox needs a grass and a fire type attacker.
That's true, yeah. I mean, Zorobox could utilize it, yeah.
With the triple energy.
I just think it's bad because like you're you're just hitting into Cramorants, and Zorobox, it capitalizes on like 1 or 2 energy attackers.
Yeah.
This one being a 3. So you need a way to get on 3. I guess like Raihan could do it for you.
No, the new special energy that provides 3 energy of any color if you're down on prizes.
Oh, yeah, reversal energy. Yeah, I guess reversal energy would work well with this. Okay, maybe you see it in Zorobox, but that's pretty much it. I think it's a bad card, though.
It's otherwise a bad... I totally agree. Otherwise a bad card, but yeah. Entei. Let's get to Entei.
The Entei basic Pokemon, Fire, 130 HP, has the ability Pressure. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's active Pokemon's attack do 20 damage less before applying weakness and resistance. 130 HP Entei into 150 is not that big of a deal, though, in my personal opinion. It does have the attack Blaze Ball for 3 colorless energy, 60 plus damage. This attack does 20 more damage for each fire energy attached to the Pokemon with stuff like Magma Basin, Charcadet. You also have what we just talked about. Well, reversal energy doesn't work on this guy, but
true.
You know, we have different fire methods in the format right now, and we have the ability to get bunch of energy on there, and you have also different things like luminous energy, right? So you can put it in a box with other attackers of different types. I'm not sure. This is also probably just a bad card in the standard format. There's going to be a big thing when we talk about these little Pokemon that I wanted to say a lot at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to say it now instead. I have looked over this set list in my personal opinion, and I think this set is great for GLC.
Okay.
I think this set is great for GLC. There's a lot of great attackers, and there's a lot of great, like, Entei, Scovillain, the Serini, you know, all the little baby Pokemon that we've talked about. They're great for GLC, but they're not great for standard.
So
like, there's not too much great for standard in this set.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And I think people have had the same opinion, which is like there's a few standout cards, but otherwise, I mean, we're giving the whole set review just for a second in the middle. But yeah, like I think that's been the general vibe is that broadly speaking, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, but you know, we'll continue talking about the cards because it's always exciting to think about cool combos that you can use on your Pokemon and just, you know, playing a variety of different decks, whether they're the best deck or just a deck that you take to locals and have fun with your friends. But Sean,
I'm going to skip over Victini EX.
Yeah,
it's trash.
I mean, Victini EX has 220. It can't attack next turn. I mean, the VMAX did that for less energy, so it's like, yeah. This one now costing 3. But Sean, what do you want to skip over to?
I'm tempted to hit the Chandelure, but it's a stage 2 and it requires.
Let's go for it. We've already talked about so many Chandelures.
You know what? Because Chandelure has in the past, it's had ups and downs. It's had some good cards. So it is a stage 2, 150 HP. Its first attack is the only one that matters. 10 plus damage for 1 fire. It does 50 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active. So look, there are going to be decks. Like a lot of the decks now are running cards that need 3 energy, right? So right there, you're
Mhm.
doing 160 for 1 energy on a stage 2. That's not bad. But if you're up against, anything that loads up energy for whatever reason, then you do a lot more. I think we still are looking for a deck that wants to load up energy that doesn't put damage counters, because Gardevoir would be the obvious choice, but it's got so many damage counters on it that you could kill it with the baby Chandelure, probably, honestly.
Mhm.
Or the baby, like the Litwick or the Lampent. You don't really need the Chandelure for that. So, but there may come a time when this is like a sneaky little card. But Jake, I think the next one is probably Ice Cube EX.
Oh, I wasn't going to talk about any
No?
more fire Pokemon actually, but we can mention Ice-Cube real quick. Basic 200 HP or 210 HP, I'm sorry. Fire Terrastal type Pokemon. So it is fire and it attacks for fire and it is weak to water, but it utilizes water energies for the attack. So it can use something like Baxcalibur, right, to provide a little bit of flexibility, I guess, in terms of attackers. Because you utilize water energies in the list. Its attack for 3 water energies is Piping Hot Block. 160 damage. You discard an energy from the Pokemon, and during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't attack. 160 is a pretty decent number, I feel like, right? Because you 2-shot for 320, and that's without the effect of any damage modifiers onto it. But I don't know. 210 is just. I just feel like 210 is pretty easy to hit right now.
Oh, yeah. No, it's easily knockoutable. The only reason that you run this is if for whatever reason you need a fire attacker in a water deck, right?
Yeah, or you just need something like if you're playing Palkia or Chin Pao,
Yeah.
right? And you face against, like, maybe Lost Box starts playing the baby Zamazenta again and it starts doing metal stuff, or you face against like a Miraidon deck, right? Because Palkia is weak to lightning. Like, it can just be another attacker that you can utilize that is not like weak. It just provides you a little bit of flexibility to maybe prevent one shots, although can still hit you for 210, and because bench is so popular, I bet Raikou would be able to as well.
Yeah. I mean, I will say though, the discard an energy, it's only 1 energy you discard. During your next turn, the defending Pokemon can't attack. Hey, that don't shake a stick at that. That's not terrible, because again, if you ever in a format where people can't switch, to your point exactly, like if you need to 2-shot something, 160 is a great number for 2-shotting. And if you just like, hey, I need you to take a turn off and not be able to attack, like, yeah, against Mew, you're not doing much because they need to retreat anyways. But
Yeah,
against a lot of other decks, there might be something there. So
it could be cheeky in some situations. Sean, let's move on to Seismitoad.
okay,
Down there in the water section. Seismitoad is a stage 2, 170 HP Pokemon in the Seismitoads of the past. Sean, with Quaking Punch, disrupting your opponent's Pokemon, or disrupting your opponent's deck, preventing doing things. This one also has an effect of some sort of prevention and disruption. The ability Quaking Area says as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's active Pokemon attacks cost colorless more, which I think is I think it's very interesting, because you look at the format right now, I feel like a lot of people are playing exact energies. Nobody's doing like excess energies really in terms of their attacks. There's finite resources that are going in, and it feels like a lot of resources, whether it's, Arceus attaching from hand per turn, or Mirage Gate getting the exact amount of energies. It feels like this format is very exact, and decks are built to not go over in their attacks. Like, it feels dangerous to be going over in your attacks. So very cool, interesting card that I feel like is pretty niche in terms of where we are.
Yeah, I think there's a stadium. I don't know if it's in this set. We'll get to it in the review, but like there's a stadium that makes basic Pokemon take one colorless more as well to attack. I think this is an interesting combo piece with that, where it's like, okay, early game, I'm going to slow you down. Mid to late game, Seismitoad is going to do at least one more, maybe two more colorless.
Mm-hmm.
I think that combination, like you would have to almost run those together. And it's a pure disruption deck. You'd play this, you'd probably play the Team Yell Cheer, I believe it is, that puts energy back in your opponent's hand. Is that still in format?
I don't know.
Maybe
Team
that
Yell
rotated.
Grunt, I think, is what you're referring to.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
that
yeah.
rotated.
Okay. Well, if it's not in format, then you'd play Crushing Hammers with this, right? Like that's you start to see a very clear pattern of a deck that you want to build. But disruption, probably, honestly, I think you play this deck, you probably play Octillery for some rapid strike shenanigans with Fan of Waves.
Mm-hmm.
You could Fan of Waves them. You could, because like that Octillery will get you a Fan of Waves every turn. So I think you play this as a heavy disruption deck. And the goal is make your opponent run through as many resources as possible, overcommit energy in order to knock out your one prizers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then at the end of the game, if you just trap something in the active, you win. Because like, hey, you've run out of energy. You've overcommitted. I think Gardevoir is probably this deck's worst matchup by far. But, you know, you play
the ability to retreat and pivot like crazy.
Right. And then it's attack cost, but it doesn't actually make it like your attacks do less. So like if it's a 3 attack cost, it's a 4, but it still does 4 worth of psychic or whatever. But you know, you run a bunch of Path to the Peaks in this too to turn that off. So I don't know. It's a stage 2. Everyone knows our opinions about stage 2s, but it could be fun to mess around with if you are really into that kind of disruptive style.
I will say, we talked earlier about the importance of potentially two-shotting things. Seismitoad does have the ability also to two-shot as well. Its attack, 2 water energies, does 120 damage, called Echoed Voice. And you may think, 120, that's weird. That's not really two-shot. You're two-shotting Vs, I guess, but not really V maxes. Well, that 120 during your next turn, this Pokemon's Echoed Voice attack does 100 more damage. So if you use it 2 turns in a row, you can hit for 320 damage without any other modifiers and things of that nature. So it's got the ability, if it does survive, to be able to just move around, I guess. You know, play around with some different ideas, some big hits, Sean.
Next one, I'm trying to see what the next card is that seems interesting. I
will say if we could real quick, to continue talking about really, really cool effects. Can we talk about Finizen real quick? Finizen and Palafin?
Yeah, let's do it.
So there's 2 Finizen cards that come in this set. We're going to talk about the 50 HP basic one. Finizen, a basic water type Pokemon, again, 50 HP. It has a really, really cool attack effect that I don't know if we've really ever seen before. So this attack is called Valiant Evolution. It is a 1 water energy cost, so very easy at the first turn of the game if you're going second. It says, switch this Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. If you do, search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it. Then shuffle your deck. So very, very cool. You can get the evolution off and protect him over on the bench. Especially, Sean, because Palafin, the evolution, which I believe is also one of the pre-release promos, so shout outs to you if you get the Palafin evolution line in the pre-release kits. It honestly, in my opinion, I feel like if you get Palafin as your pre-release promo, or you get some sort of Palafin evolution line, yeah, you've got like a really good shot to win you've got a really good shot to win the event. It's got 2 different attacks on this 150 HP Stage 1 Water Pokemon. The first one being Jet Punch. We've seen this before in Buzzwole GX, most notably. Landorus EX, I think, as well. So going on to Water Pokemon now. It does 30 damage to the active and 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. But it also has a second attack for water called Justice Kick. 210 damage it does for just 2 waters. If this Pokemon didn't move from the bench to the active spot this turn, this attack does nothing. So it'll be a little bit difficult in a pre-release format unless we get like switch carts, escape ropes, just raw switches in general.
Yeah, they might give switches in this specific deck just because they know.
I mean, I feel like in general you get switches in pre-release kits because switch is one of those cards that's like always in standard.
Yeah,
I feel like you'll get at least 1 or 2 switches in just the pre-release kit in general, regardless what Pokemon you get.
Yeah. Jake, do we want to talk about the Tyranitar? I think that's the first of the electric types, which I know I just said electric type and Tyranitar in the same sentence, which is weird. But this is another one of those type shifting Terra types, terrestrial types. Tyranitar EX, lightning type, 340 HP terrestrial form. This one does use fighting energy, however, as its energy type. So you would play this typically in a fighting deck. The first attack, 1 fighting energy, Mountain Bash, 120, discard the top 2 cards of your deck. It's fine. I don't think it's particularly crazy, but hey, a lightning deck that can hit, or a fighting deck that can hit for lightning weakness ain't bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second attack, Thor's Rampage, 150 plus. If any of your bench Pokemon have any damage counters on them, it does 100 more. So 250 is what you'd be aiming for 2 fighting. Jake, how do you feel about this?
I think this card could see a lot of play. I know some people are very excited about a card like this. I mean, especially 120, you know, we're in a format of there are a couple Pokemon that are weak to fighting, right? Or I'm sorry, we have a couple Pokemon.
Weak to lightning, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, weak to lightning. And if you're running this card, this Tyranitar, you're probably playing some sort of fighting deck. Because fighting, I feel like, has slowly gotten more and more support, especially with things like Koraidon, right? Koraidon EX, Halucha, etc., etc. So you get a little bit more flexibility in terms of the weakness that you can hit in this format, as well as getting some pretty good damage, I feel like, overall. I feel like you could do a pretty good job about the damage because, you know, 120 for 1 energy, even though it discards the top 2 cards of your deck, pretty good in my opinion. I feel like 120 is a pretty decent number. And then 150 to 250, I feel like could be pretty good as well because we have so many Pokemon in this format that spread around damage, right? We have so many Pokemon that can move damage as well. So there could be some cheeky combos, especially with Gape Jog Bog, right?
Yeah.
That you're already playing in something like Ting Lu to be able to maximize that damage and to really just heavy hitter. I mean, 340 HP as well. I think is that the beefiest Pokemon in the format?
I want to say there's one other 340. It might be a Kaparaja or, you know, there might be something out there that's that big, but there's not a lot.
It's on the high end.
Yeah. Yeah, my only thought here is like this feels like a card that was designed to be put in a deck that counters Arceus Flying Pikachu, right? Because you're literally hitting the exact weaknesses. So like if you are building a fighting deck, cool, I can hit Arceus. If you're building a lightning deck, cool, I can hit Pikachu. Why not both? ¿Por qué no los dos, Jake?
¿Por qué no los dos? Exactly, Sean. So I think this Tyranitar is going to be pretty cool. I mean, this is a thing that is with all the Terrastall EX cards. I don't like them.
Yeah.
I don't like the Terrastall EX in terms of their appearance.
Oh, like the way that the card is physically like designed.
Yeah, I think it's lackluster personally. Yeah.
Yeah, they just put a hat on. And
they put the hat on and they turn the brightness all the way up.
I think I want to go to the next one. The next one is Thunderous. Now, I just briefly read it and it seems broken. But Thunderous says ability bad weather as long as Pokemon is in the active, prevent all damage done to your benched Pokemon. So actually, no, this is terrible. This is just bad.
Yeah, this is terrible. It's
this
yeah,
is bad
this,
Manaphy.
Again, and here's
Sorry.
what we're gonna say again and again. I mean, this Thunderous really cool in GLC.
Yeah.
Right now, lightning type decks get a bench barrier type Pokemon with a basic Pokemon that for 2 energies can hit for 140 damage, which is a really good number in GLC. So
in theory, it's great.
It's fine, but there are better cards to play in terms of bench barrier.
But Manaphy,
arguably the Terrastol Pokemon that have the bench barrier effect, which we haven't even been mentioning.
No, because it's pointless.
Effectively, those are just better.
Yeah. Jake, I have no clue what to say next then. What's the next one on your list?
Sean, let's move over to Psychic Pokemon 2, arguably one of the best Pokemon in this set that's coming out. It is little baby Cleffa, 30 HP Cleffa. So Sean, you've played some retro formats, some early stuff. So you remember the Eek Cleffa, right? The little baby Eek Cleffa that came in Celebrations as well. This one is kind of a reincarnation of it to an extent. It's got kind of the same effect, but instead of an ability, it's going to be on an attack. So Grasping Draw is the attack. It does not cost anything. You do not have to have any energies on this Pokemon to use the attack. It is a free retreater, by the way. 30 HP basic Psychic Pokemon. Draw cards until you have 7 cards in your hand. So in a deck such as, Gardevoir, right? Gardevoir loves a card like this to be able to just draw cards, after you rip out 8 of your VIP passes, right? As they always do, it feels like turn 1. You're going to be able to continuously draw cards then thereafter to be able to start building up your board state, evolve those Curlias much faster, find those supporters, things like that, discard those energies, as well as basically any other deck that really just loves setup cards or just loves setting up after your first turn. Cleffa is a great option going second. I mean, it's going to be knocked out and you have to be a little bit wary of Sableye, but you use this Pokemon for the early game, not for the late game, probably. So this is a really cool card. I think this is like the most hype card in the set that people are talking about. I know, I think Azul made a video about it. I think Andrew Mahone made a video about it, like this card specifically. And I'm sure everybody else under the sun, when they do set reviews, including us, is going to talk about this card and how it is pretty doggone good. So very exciting to see this card, Sean.
Yeah, it's just dope, right? It has free retreat as well, which that's cool.
It's just pretty sick.
Yeah. Cool card. I pick a copy or two up. I'm sure you'll pull it because it is a common.
I mean, yeah, it's a common, so you can get these for cents. I'm sure of it. Just stupid cheap prices.
And I will say, you mentioned Gardevoir. There is another card that that little Cleffa actually doesn't evolve into it. Baby Pokemon don't evolve. That's interesting.
Does it not?
No.
Oh, I guess you're right, because the Clefairy in this set is a basic Pokemon. Well, although I think
kind of weird.
I think in the old sets, I'm trying to think to when baby Pokemon were really running rampant in formats. Didn't they have text on the evolutions that the evolutions were basics, but they had the ability to still evolve into the Pokemon? And then I think it was this might have been 2006, 7 or something like that. I remember a Clefairy, for example, it had a Pokebody or Pokepower, I'm not sure which one, that said if the previous evolution Cleffa is under this card, you gained an extra effect from the Pokebody or something like that. I'm pretty sure there was something like that.
But this one isn't.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to get some sort of I don't know if you can still evolve it though, if it's just one of those things that's
nope.
Huh.
because I'm looking at the Clefable, right? And it tells you in the Clefable what it evolves from. And it says it
Yeah.
evolves from Clefairy. So
I
it
don't
does
know.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like what I'm saying is back then those Pokemon still said basic on it though. But you could still technically evolve it.
Sure, but whenever you evolve, you have to the evolution Pokemon says what it evolves from.
Yeah.
So I mean, they might one day print a card that evolves from Cleffa,
Yeah,
but
I guess.
The Clefable currently, as it's printed, evolves from Clefairy. So
I didn't yeah,
that's the weird
it's
one.
yeah, I don't know. We'll have to get like a thing on that if you're able to evolve Cleffa into Clefairy. I didn't actually think about that
Because
before.
I was thinking about it, I'm like, that would have been really nice. Because Clefable, I'll briefly mention Clefable too. It has the
Hmm.
ability Lunar Zone. Each of your Pokemon that has a Psychic Energy has no retreat cost. So you'd think to yourself, hey, this is probably pretty good in Gardevoir. Um, Potentially, right? Like you don't necessarily want to
Hmm.
put all your energy across Pokemon. You want them to be in the discard. But its attack for 3 Psychic, Wondrous Moon, 170, move any number of Psychic energy from your Pokemon to other Pokemon in any way you like. To me, that one's really interesting because one of the biggest problems with Gardevoir is when you load up the energy, you put a lot of damage on whatever Pokemon it is, right? So it can be within Sableye range, it could be within whatever. And the real threat is if you can get the energy onto a Pokemon that your opponent can't one shot, but you can one shot them. That's when the math gets really funky, I think, for when you
Hmm.
play against a Gardevoir deck. So I was like, hey, this could be the Clefable, also could be an alternate card in Gardevoir decks. I would have loved if you could evolve from Cleffa. Like, my gut says no. My gut says no, unfortunately.
It's also interesting in the effect that sometimes with Gardevoir, you're facing like a type of spread deck or
Hmm.
something like that. And so you use Cresselia several times, right? And all of a sudden your energy is stuck in these places. You can only manually retreat so many times.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this Clefable is in those decks. But Sean, we talked about Cleffa drawing cards early. What about drawing cards late? Let's go over to Togekiss. Now, this is another one of those interesting cards that could see play, but I mainly want to talk about its super unique effect in the game. So it has the ability Precious Gift. Once at the end of your turn, parentheses, after your attack, you may use this ability. Draw cards until you have 8 cards in your hand. Now, I do believe that you literally have to announce an attack in order to
Like, you can't pass turn.
utilize this. Yeah, you can't just pass turn and then this ability activates. I believe you actually have to announce the attack. But more often than not, if you've got a stage 2 in play, you're probably announcing some sort of an attack anyways.
Yeah.
In this deck. So you can use that, draw up a bunch of cards going on through, and then the attack for 2 colorless, Power Cyclone, 110 damage, move an energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon. So a big reason why I also wanted to talk about this card is I could see Gardevoir, if it wanted to include an inclusion, going one of 2 ways, either the Clefable or the Togekiss, right? Because especially with the Togekiss, you're probably using an attack every single turn, whether it's Memory Skip, whether it's Cresselia, whether it's, literally just any attack, the Gardevoir, the Zacian, or whatever. And so you can continuously draw cards as if there wasn't already enough draw power in a deck like Gardevoir. So you can do that while also moving energies like we talked about, how sometimes, the energies can get funky. You can still do a little bit of energy movement if you come to the point in the game where, you're facing a Cramorant, right? Or a Sableye, and you don't need to go in with a Zacian or something like that. So you can just go in if you don't need to draw cards anymore because they're not playing Ionos or something like that. You could just go in with this Togekiss after you've all set up and stuff like that. And you could just go ahead, whack.
Yeah.
You can take a knockout that way. And 150 is an interesting number because aside from Dragonite or Raikou, you force them to utilize a 2-prizer to get a knockout in response if it doesn't already have damage counters on it from like a Sableye or Greninja or something like that. So it's very cheeky, I feel like. You could go one of two ways.
It's also it's an interesting card because I like the effect of after your attack. It doesn't have to be in the active, right? So this could just be a bench sitter. I think the question people are going to have is, do I want cards at the end of my turn or do I want Bibarel during my turn? Because like this draws you up to 8 rather than 5. So there is a 3-card difference there. Yeah, it's really interesting. But I guess if you're a deck that's already playing 3 to 4 rare candies, here's a really weird thought, Jake. Do you play a card like this in Chen Pao?
I don't know if Chen Pao would, because here's the thing, like you need the energies in your hand before the attack. I mean, I guess it could work. I guess it wouldn't be the worst thing, but the thing that you would have to replace is the 1/1 line of Arceus, I feel like the Chen Pao lists are so tight, right?
That's fair.
That you would need to get rid of the Arceus. And is it worth getting rid of the Arceus? Because Starbirth is really good, just allowing you to get 2 cards. Any 2 cards. Where drawing cards is really nice, but I don't know. It's an interesting fact because I think, yeah, you're right. Maybe an option could be Chin Pao for that card.
Yeah, it's just
it
just
would
a weird
probably
thought.
help you out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird thought. You already have to prioritize a second stage 2 in Excalibur, so probably not. But hey, if somebody can break it, I think it would be an interesting thing in a deck that wants resources to get the energy back after they attack. Jake, what else? What else in the Psychic, if there's any?
Let's go over to Claydol because I think it can reference a card that we were talking about earlier in the Set Another Pokemon. This Claydol is 120 HP Psychic Stage 1 Pokemon with the first attack, which is the only one that we're going to talk about in this deck. It is called Kaboom Doll for 1 Psychic Energy. It says put damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon until its remaining HP is 10 HP. Then put 120 damage to itself. So knocking itself out, putting your opponent to just 10 HP left. And if you scroll back up to the Trevenant, what if you just then promoted the Trevenant for in the Pokemon checkup phase to put a damage counter on your opponent's Pokemon to knock it out?
Jake, you're a genius. That is amazing.
I saw it on Twitter. I can't take a ton of credit for it, but
I think that's, dude, I want to build this deck. This looks so good.
I purposely didn't say anything when we were talking about the Trevenant because I didn't think you had any inkling on what the combo could be. So,
this is like okay, I'm going to say this now. This might be the best single prizer deck. Maybe not Lost Box. Fine. But like rogue decks, this is legit. Like if you have that, because they're both only stage 1s. You don't have to go into stage 2s. You don't need any of those shenanigans, right? So it's 1 energy. Trevenant doesn't even need to attack. You just run a bunch of switches.
Switch cards.
Well, escape ropes and switches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, escape ropes, switches, bosses, and you just are like, hey, I just got to blow up 3 dudes. I blow up 3 dudes and you lose.
Or maybe 2.
Or maybe 2 in Mew. Right. Oh my gosh, that would be so against Mew, especially. I know that Mew's already got Drapion to deal with.
I don't know if Mew. I think Mew would have to move off of Fusion Strike in order for it to work. Because doesn't the Fusion Energy block effects of attacks and abilities?
Oh, maybe it does. Yeah, you might be right.
But I will say it's a cheeky version, and if you want to play something like that now, a combo like that now, look no further than Alolan Raticate. It's not in the set, it was in the Pokemon Go set, Sean. But Alolan Raticate for 3 colorless energies has Super Fang as an attack. Put damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon until its remaining HP is 10. It was rumored at NAIC, but not necessarily a actual thing. Clodsire EX has an ability, stage 1 Pokemon. Once in your turn, if a stadium is in play, you may make your opponent's active Pokemon poisoned. That, in my opinion, would probably be a better combination for the like one-hit knockout anything. Just a real cheeky kind of list like that. But if you want something fun and only consisting of one prizers, that could just be a very fun option.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of doing the math on that. So you give up a prize, put something in the active that's easily knockoutable, but
You're effectively giving up 2 prizes potentially, though. Because
so
you knock out your own clay doll and then you send something up and it'll get knocked out from Trevenant.
I'm just
like
trying
Trevenant will get knocked out.
Yeah, so I'm trying to do the math. Like, so you you give up one, and then they take.
It works
second.
either if, like, it works if you're facing a 2 prize deck and you're attacking first. You're taking prizes first, or you win against 3 prize decks. But any single prize deck, you probably just lose.
Yeah, no, you definitely lose to a single prize.
You just
deck.
lose.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I like that. Let's move on to Vespiquen. I have no idea if this is really good, but it's another one of those.
Excited about this Vespiquen.
Okay, it's another one of the Terra types. It is a psychic Pokemon, but it takes grass energy, 270 HP, only a stage 1. So it's got that going for that. First one is 1 grass, recovery pheromones, heals 60 damage from one of your Pokemon. That's interesting. The second attack, 3 grass, 200 damage. Put 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's benched Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So my gut says that this is a great partner for Meowscarada.
It could be something with Meowscarada. I think it could be its own deck with something such as Holuchas, Gapejock Bog, stuff like that.
Yeah.
These different cards that allow damage counters, Radiant Alakazam, right? This card could be able to just be messed around with in general to spread all of that damage. Because think about it, I talked about how the Trevenant, I wish the Trevenant was like it did all Pokemon.
Yeah.
When it was in the active spot. This Vespiquen is basically like the Weezing, except instead of an ability, you have to attack, which is better than Trevenant, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, my cat has joined us.
Yes.
I think this is really cool because also the 3 damage counters gets around all the Manaphy stuff, right? They could have written 30 damage, but they chose 3 damage counters specifically. So, yeah, you're right. It might be its own deck. Meowscarada also places damage counters. I think Meowscarada, if you're down for that, this is fun. Okay, I know we said the set has some, it's not as amazing as others, but there's a few cards.
It's not the greatest in terms of like this will win the first regional of the year kind of stuff, but it has a lot of like really cool and fun new cards that are being introduced. We've talked about it several times. Effects that we've never seen before on attacks. Really interesting combos that you can use to one-shot stuff or set up math in different unique ways. Like, it's a lot of cards that can make the Pokemon card game fun, right? Yeah. You want to play fun decks with your friends. You don't want to play your 800th game of Arceus, Duraludon, Umbreon versus Lost Tina, right? You don't want to play that matchup again. You can go ahead and queue up Vespiquen versus Claydol Trevenant, right? And that's just fun. You can do Finizen as well, Palafin Finizen, stuff like that. So again, it's just really fun. But Sean, the control stuff may be coming back a little bit with Poltegeist, if you want to scroll down a little bit. 70 HP, stage 1 Pokemon. Poltegeist has a psychic attack called Anti-Collecting. Put up to 2 in any combination of item and Pokemon tool cards from your discard pile into your hand. Again, with the 1 energy Pokemon, right? The reincarnation,
it's like resource management.
Yeah, it's like resource management, but worse.
We
see a limit.
It's item
but
and
better.
It's item and tool into your hand.
True. it is into your hand to be able to reutilize cards immediately instead of if you draw into it. So very interesting. I like this effect. Unfortunately, I don't know if it'll be great. If it was on a basic Pokemon, that'd be interesting. But I mean, I think we saw it with Float Soul. I think had a similar effect like this for, I think it was one colorless. It might have been a water, but we're starting to see these like put things from the discard pile into your hand more so on stage 1 Pokemon. I think they realized with Oranguru like how dangerous it can be on basic Pokemon to have multiple things put back into your hand.
Jake, I'm moving down now. I think that's all. I don't really want to talk about Houndstone EX. I just don't want to talk about it.
I mean,
it's fine.
The only thing is like Psychic double colorless, 160 plus 10 more damage for each Psychic Pokemon in your discard pile. If you're playing just a straight up Psychic deck, maybe, I don't know, but you could put the Gengars in there, the Gengars that go from the discard to the bench.
Yeah,
that could be cool.
Could.
But anyways, we'll move
this
on.
Is me
like
being like, I don't know about this one.
Whatever.
Let's see. I want to say the Stunfisk is a little interesting, just the tiniest bit. It has an ability custom trap. If this Pokemon is in the active, it is damaged by an opponent's Pokemon, which means it will probably be knocked out. If this Pokemon has a Pokemon tool card attached, put 5 damage counters. But it's like a slightly better. You could play this with like Rocky Helmet or other cards that deal damage counters. So like
Mysterious, or what is it? Box of Destruction.
Yeah, you could do that kind of stuff. So it's like, okay,
you just put like 14 damage counters on it or whatever in a single turn.
Yeah.
Sean, if we could real quickly, this is not because this card is good in any sense. It's actually quite bad, but I just wanted to give it a little shout out. Bonsly is in this set. Sean, Bonsly is returning to the Pokemon trading card game after, I believe, 18 years.
Okay.
It's the first Bonsly card. It's the first Bonsly card in so long in the Pokemon trading card game. Oh gosh, I'm trying to figure out the last Bonsly TCG card, because I know that people were screaming all over Twitter about the Bonsly.
Return of Bonsly.
The first Bonsly card from Diamond and Pearl base set from 2007. There we go.
Okay, well, welcome back, Bonsly.
Welcome back, Bonsly, little Bonsly. But John, yeah, let's move on to another card going on here. There is a little Toad School in the set. We were talking about Toad School. There is a little Toad School set in here. It's 60 HP basic fighting Pokemon, so you can get a fighting Pokemon evolved into the whatchamacallit, the other one. But Sean, do you want to talk about Cloth EX?
Briefly. He's got it's a 220 HP EX fighting type. If he's in the active and is damaged by an attack from an opponent's Pokemon, discard an energy from the attacker. I believe you get to choose which energy you discard, which may matter. But you're giving up 2 prizes to discard 1 energy. Most likely, they won't attack into this unless they know they're going to knock you out. So, it seems bad. Seems bad, Jake, but
it seems interesting. It could be something that is utilized in a more like control style deck. I'm not sure, especially if we get something like a Heroes Metal reprint or like I was talking about the Shedinja, something along those lines. It could be something of that sort. But the fighting Pokemon that I really want to talk about, John, is Glamora EX. Glamora EX, a 270 HP stage 1 Pokemon, has the ability Dust Field. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent can't have any more than 3 benched Pokemon. If it has if they have 4 or more bench Pokemon, they discard Pokemon until they have 3. So it's basically a 1-up of Collapsed Stadium. If more than one effect changes the number of bench Pokemon allowed, use the smaller numbers. So, like I was saying with the Collapsed Stadium, if you have Collapsed Stadium and Dust Stadium or Dust Field ability Glamora EX on the field, you would just use Dust Field because 3 is less than 4. It has the attack for fighting and fighting energy, 2 fighting energies. Poisonous Gem, 140 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poison. Sean, I feel like this Glamora card could actually be pretty all right.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. A lot of decks are playing heavy setup, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also think about, like, if you wanted a good Lost Box tech, you throw this Glamora down, early before they have, put their, say they attack with a Cramorant turn 1, right? But then they've got like a Radiant Greninja and like 2 Comfies or 3 Comfies and something else, right? You throw that thing down, you evolve into this, and they just can't. They just can't do anything else. And like, depending on their deck size, actually, they will eventually draw into their stadiums, assuming they have them. So like they will be able to get around this eventually. But like this is a crazy card to like punish decks that are big setup decks that like maybe they don't see it coming and they like bench the wrong things and they're like, uh-oh.
It is also worth noting that in Paldea Evolved, the Pokemon that evolves into Glamora Glimmet has an Ascension attack, Sean, for 1 fighting energy. So if you're going second with this deck, you can immediately Ascension into a Dust Field, which would be pretty good in my opinion. And hitting for 140, you for 2 fighting energies can one-shot any Arceus deck. You can one-shot any silly Miraidon deck, but also you can combo with Flying Entry Hawlucha, Poison Peak Radiant Hisuian Sneasler. You can actually just beat Duraludon, Arceus, Umbreon. I feel like you one-shot the Arceus, you two-shot Duraludon and Umbreon.
Yep.
And also with is Flying Pikachu VMAX resistant to fighting? Flying Pikachu.
It's not resistant.
Yes, it is. It is resistant to fighting. So I don't think that you can two-shot the Flying Pikachu, which is becoming more popular in the Arceus decks. But it can still, like we were talking about with Dustfield, only limiting your opponent to having 3 bench Pokemon, it can provide a lot of disruption.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. Very interesting card.
I like Glamora EX a lot.
I think it's going to see some play because it's very disruptive. 3 bench max is crazy. Jake, the big one that everybody's talking about.
The big kahuna. Whooper! I'm just kidding.
No. The Charizard EX. If you're listening to this podcast and you're already filled in, you probably have heard about this, but let's explain it to you. 330 HP Pokemon. However, this is one of those Terra types. This one is a Dark type Charizard making a triumphant return for the first time in many years, having a Dark type Charizard.
Ever since what was it, the Delta species?
Yeah.
I know there's a Dark Charizard, but that's not like Dark type Charizard. That's like when they had Light Pokemon and Dark Pokemon.
But this Charizard, this Charizard, Jake, has an ability, Infernal Rain. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may search your deck for 3 basic fire energy, attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like, and then shuffle. So, look, it only takes 2 energy to do its attack, but you can power up other Pokemon, right? You could say, hey, I'm going to evolve this. I'll power up the other Charizard EX that's coming out. I'll power up Charizard V-Star that's coming that you already have access to, right? Yeah, and the attack is no small thing. For 2 fire, Burning Darkness, 180 damage, but it does 30 more for each prize card your opponent has taken. So it maxes out at 330 damage if it's the last, if your opponent is down to 1. But also 180 as a dark type Pokemon is enough to knock out Gardevoir EX, Mew VMAX. Those are the two that matter right now, at least. So, I look at this and I'm like, okay, a fire deck, it's not really hitting for much relevant weakness, but all of a sudden you have an attacker that accelerates energy and hits for relevant weakness. It's beefy in and of itself in a format where grass Pokemon aren't always that popular.
Toad EX is coming, I'm telling you.
I mean, yeah, Toadscroll EX is coming, but guess what? The rest of your Charizards are fire type, so you hit that one for weakness.
I mean, think about it. You have Radiant Charizard in the deck that allows you, again, it's a similar attack of hitting more damage for each prize card, but if you want just like a cheap 1 energy attacker, and maybe it's earlier in the game, if you can get the Charizard off, you can just accelerate the energies to it. You still have Magma Stadium, right? You have Magma Basin and Char Cadet, so you can power up this Charizard. If you decide to evolve into Charizard EX and accelerate the energies on all 3 energies on a different Pokemon, you can get this guy powered up pretty easily with just a hand attachment and like Magma Basin Char Cadet. Because I don't think you can Magma Basin onto this evolution. Pokemon.
Yeah.
Well, I think Magma Basin is just for fire Pokemon.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah. But I mean, even still, like you could just hand attach when it's a Charmander, hand attach when it's a Charizard, and boom, you're powered up.
Yeah, or you can Magma Basin as a Charmander. Yeah,
sure.
Hand attachments.
It's easy. I mean, 2 energy on this one is easy. And the fact that all the other Charizards require a lot of fire energy, and boom, now you've got your acceleration from the deck. It doesn't even need to be from your hand. So, yes, it's a stage 2. Yes, the other Charizard EX is a stage 2. Yes, the Charizard V-Star is a stage 1. However, this Charizard EX can share the exact same evolution line as the other EX Charizard. And then you can run a 1-1 line of the V-Star one. You can run 1 Radiant Charizard. Everything's going to do crazy damage. So you get to utilize the Radiant ability. You get to utilize a V-Star power. You get to utilize cool EX things that can get around, things like Choice Belt. I don't know, man. I'm really tempted to build an all Charizard style deck.
I think you could do it. And see like some success, especially at the local level with it.
But yeah, that's the big money card. I mean, we can't show it today because I don't think it's on this version of the page that we're on, but there's also very fancy versions of this Charizard you could get, which I think we've talked about.
I will say, I think I said it on the podcast that the illustration rare, was it?
Yeah.
Of the Charizard did not look super good, but the Pokemon company, the Pokemon TCG site, I believe it was, actually showcased in a tweet the actual Charizard card, like their version of it. And it looks much more dynamic. Sean, I'm downloading it now so that I can send it to you in Discord to maybe showcase. It just looks so much more emphatic. And I like the card a lot more because of it. So
okay,
it'll be interesting to see how they play around more with this card and what it looks like in person, because this, I mean, it looks much cooler than what it did when it first got revealed.
Yeah, better in person.
And I don't know if it's just editing, editing capabilities or whatever, but I don't know, it just looks better in my opinion what they tweeted out.
Jake, is there anything else in the darkness realm that feels particularly interesting?
I do not, Sean. I would rather go to, I mean, cause like Absol, Houndoom, no, I'm not really feeling those, to be honest. I'd rather go to Metal and talk about the 90 HP basic Pokemon Metal Mawile with the ability Special Eater. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may discard a special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Special energy are very good right now in the Pokemon trading card game, and so a level ballable Pokemon. Too bad we don't have Scoop Up Net or Super Scoop Up or anything like that in the format, because you could really cause some disruption on Special Eater
Yeah.
utilizing this Pokemon. The only thing is it doesn't work with Fusion Strike energy,
The one
which is
Pokemon
so
that has.
unfortunate.
I mean, look, this is there is a world in which if Arceus continues to be incredibly dominant, and you are like, I put one of these in my deck going second. So that way, if my opponent attaches the double turbo, boom, throw this down. Yes, it takes up a bench space. It's super annoying, but like that might be all you need. You just need the Arceus deck to take a turn off. And in that case, like this might be worth it in some decks to be like, Arceus is a tough matchup for me for whatever reason. There's like 5 or 6 versions of it running around out there. Let me throw one Mawile in the deck. And I think for that reason alone, it has some value.
Sean, let's move over to King Gambit real quick. Stage 2 Pokemon, 180 HP metal Pokemon. I just think it's a little bit cheeky of an attack. 1 energy called Execute. If your opponent's active Pokemon has 4 more damage counters on it, it is knocked out. And with cards that I mentioned earlier, Gape Jogbog, Hawlucha, the Radiant Alakazam, things like that. There's a lot of ways, especially with spread decks like Rapid Strike Inteleon, Meowscarada, stuff like that, to be able to get damage counters everywhere and just have King Gambit just like whoop, drop, whoop, drop, whoop, drop.
I like the concept of it, but I will say, like, it's basically a metal that does 40 damage. That's literally that's all it is. It's a stage 2 that does 40.
But for 1 energy, if the opponent's active Pokemon has 4 more damage counters on it, it's knocked out.
4 or more.
Yeah.
My brain interpreted that has 4 or more like 40 or more damage left. That's how my brain.
No.
No. This is
more
good.
than 4 damage counters on it, it's knocked out. Yeah, this is cheeky in my opinion.
This is very cheeky.
I like this guy. He's
I
a
agree.
cool little dude.
Cool little dude.
Cool little dude.
Let's see here. Is the Melmetal EX worth talking about? Any of the cards that come from the starter decks typically are not particularly interesting. But Jake, I think the one that some people are also very excited about is Revavroom EX. Stage 1, 280 HP Pokemon. It has this very interesting ability, which reminds me of an old Genesect GX card, I believe. This Pokemon may have up to 4 Pokemon tools attached to it. If it loses this ability, discard Pokemon tools from it until only 1 remains. That all makes sense. But there are a lot of tools that exist already, but also a lot of tools that are coming out in 151 that make this card particularly good.
Interesting.
Jake, yeah. What are some of those examples?
If
you know.
From 151, I was going to say, I don't know. We haven't done the set list yet. Yeah. I mean, just in general, you have a lot of flexibility. I mean, we have stuff like Arvin in the format that can go get different tool cards and stuff like that. I mean, you have choice belts in the format to add extra damage, vitality bands as well, to be able to do stuff like that, as well as, you know, stuff that we talked about earlier, the box of disruption, right? With the, what's the panic mask you can have on there. There's just a lot of different stuff available for tune-up to just provide some very cheeky stuff on the Revavroom. And honestly, you can play the Revavroom with the pre-release promo one that was like discard your hand and what was it? It was like
draw
discard...
up to 5 or something, or draw 3. It's like a draw 3, discard 1 and draw 3, I think, or something.
Yeah, something like that. It was a really good. It's a really interesting ability for drawing cards. So you can use that in combination of this as sort of draw engine, because you're already playing the little baby basic Pokemon Varoom in here. So Revavroom could be very cool with its ability, boosting up the attack, boosting up defenses, boosting. I mean, I think the helmet, the Oinkalone helmet, the I can't remember. It's like the Spaceman helmet. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Put 4 of those on there, prevents so much damage, effectively making you, I think, like 350 or so HP effectively. And with an attack, Metal, Colorless, Wild Drift for 170 during your opponent's next turn. This Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attack. You can stack up the damage on top of that. So, ton of different ways, Sean, to utilize this Pokemon, I feel like.
Yeah, it'll be. I think a lot of people have fun building this with a variety of tools. Like you can kind of. The fun thing about this one is it can be a bit of a chameleon deck to like whatever style you want to play. Jake, do we want to talk about this Dragonite? Is it good?
There's no reason to play this Dragonite, in my opinion, because if you're playing Dragonite multi different colored energy attackers, just play Lost Box with the Dragonite, with the Turbo Dragonite. That's pretty much it.
Okay, I like that. Keeping it simple.
We have talked a little bit already about the Pidgeot EX. I believe we talked about it a bit last week. Just to refresh anybody who doesn't know, Stage 2, 280 HP, normal type Pokemon, this Pidgeot EX, has the ability Quick Search, which is what people are talking about. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for a card and put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck. You can't use more than one Quick Search ability each turn. So it's very cool because you can just search your card for literally anything you want every single turn and put it in your hand. You know, if you got Ionoed, you got Roxanne or whatever, you got Judged, you could just say, Quick Search into Research and draw it up. But as we talked about, it's not as strong as it used to be in the 2006-2007 era because Rare Candy has since been errated. You could rare candy, like you could evolve a Pokemon on the turn that it was put down with rare candy in format. So not having access to that anymore, it does weaken it a little bit, but a 200 HP EX Pokemon with that ability kind of like, in my opinion, levels it a little bit in terms of its power. It feels like a pretty fair trade, I feel like. So if you're a deck that's playing rare candies already, I don't know, maybe a 1-1 line of Pidgeot EX is something that you throw into. If we ever get Ditto back in format, Ditto Prism Star, man, decks would be so much cooler if we had Ditto Prism Star, I swear. They need to bring that back. I know it was really good, but bring it back, please.
Yeah. In terms of the other normal type Pokemon, I'm scrolling down, Jake, and I guess Greedent EX, I don't know. This is another starter deck card. Trash. It's not good. It lets you look at the top 3 and, do something with them, but like
it's like draw 3, but you could also discard 3. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put those cards into your hand or discard them and draw 3 cards. Which is interesting. So it's effectively like draw 6.
Yeah, if you don't want those
to an
3.
extent. Yeah, but the top 3, you have to either choose to discard them or put them in your hand. And I don't think you do like, discard these 2, add this 1. I think for the first top 3, you have to do one or the other with it, but then you just draw 3 cards after it. So pretty cool in my opinion. I think that's another really cool effect in Ruler of the Black Flame that we don't really see a lot of times. So
yeah,
I think it's cute.
They just put it, for any of you Magic fans out there, they put Surveil on a card. Look at the top 3 cards, put them into your graveyard, draw 3 or whatever, something like that. Anywho,
I will say in the trainer cards, we don't know exactly what it looks like yet, but we do know that we are getting a reprint of Arven in there, or well, who knows? I don't actually know if it's confirmed that it's a different Arven. I would assume it's the same Arven because it's the same, card name. It's not like the card name changed, like Arven's Adventure or Arven's Backpack or something like that. So it's just Arven. Who knows? Maybe Arven gets a 3rd full art kind of card.
It might. Yeah.
We have no idea.
But yeah, Arven seems to be getting a reprint. But then you got, in terms of the other trainers, there's Brassius, which is interesting. It's shuffle your hand into your deck and draw cards until you have one more card than you shuffled in. So basically, it replaces itself as part of its draw. So like when you play it, you have one less, but then you get that one back. So it's an interesting card, especially if you're playing a deck that is looking for anything specific and has a big hand typically. It's probably the best draw card you can play because sometimes you also don't want to discard them all. So it's like yeah, research guarantees you 7, but you got to get rid of everything. But say you're playing a Curlia based deck, right? Where you're drawing cards, but you're like looking for one specific thing. Okay, well, I'll get 8 or 9, and then I'll Brassius and draw 9 effectively. So, very specific, but I think it has some value in some places.
I think Gita is an even better card. Gita, a supporter from Black Flame Ruler, says until the end of your turn you play this card, none of your Pokemon can attack. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards and attach them to one of your Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. This is super good early game. I feel like, early game, you might not be really attacking with anything. There might not be a good option of attacking. So building up your board state and building up your Pokemon can be very, very good, especially if you get 2 basic energies at the beginning and then you have the ability to, I don't know, like Curlia or Radiant Greninja, draw more cards after that. To kind of thin out your deck before you start drawing. So Gita could be pretty interesting in my opinion and can be used in a lot of different situations. So I'm excited about that card. I think there's a lot of cheeky things that you can do.
Yeah, I almost think of this. I don't know if it's a good one but like weirdly in whatchamacallit, Gardevoir. In a Gardevoir, I mean, if you're doing multiple energy too, it's also really good. It doesn't specify, but in Gardevoir, typically on turn 1, especially in some matchups, like getting a bunch of energy already set up on one of your Pokemon, if you know that like you can't attack anyways on turn 1 with Gardevoir, so you can do this, and then you can even Zacian, so you can effectively get 4 energy into play without even needing the Gardevoir EX. So interesting. I think the next one, the Letter of Encouragement, I just read it over. I think this is an interesting card, especially in a deck like Chen Pao. So you can play this card only if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your last turn. But it is an item, too, which is really nice. Search your deck for 3 basic energy, put them into your hand, and shuffle. So, hey, Chen Pao often is a little glass cannon. You put some energy onto it, blow something up, and as an item card,
get knocked out in response.
Exactly, that get knocked out in response, and then you sometimes got to be like, okay, where am I going to get this energy? You might need a superior energy retrieval to get it from the discard, but if you can go grab 2 out with the Chen Pao, 3 out with this, or maybe there is a Path to the Peak in play, and you can't use your Chen Pao ability, hey, you still got the Letter of Encouragement, maybe. So
you're also playing cards like Irida, right?
Yep.
That are around. If you already have a rare candy in your hand, there's no sense in getting another rare candy if you're not evolving into a second Baxcalibur in that same turn. So it may be more effective instead to grab the Letter of Encouragement to be able to grab those energies, like you're saying, in the early game. This card could be really good for any like 1 prize deck or any deck that plays some sort of like deluge Pokemon like the Baxcalibur, where you're just putting energies in a lot of places in a single time. So could be cheeky, could be like a 1 of that you see 1 or 2 of in some decks.
I'm going to skip over Ortega. I don't think Ortega is a particularly good card.
Nope. I don't think so either.
What is Patrol Cap? It's another item. It's another tool. So like, tools are the whole thing now. So Patrol Cap, as long as Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active, cards in your deck can't be discarded by the effects of your opponent's attacks, abilities, items, tools, or supporters. Excuse me, is this literally an anti-mill card?
It is.
Oh
and I mean, there's not really much, I feel like. The biggest thing I think it prevents is like Tyranitar. Because doesn't Tyranitar have an attack?
No, it discards your own.
Discards. But I think the first attack discard cards from your opponent's deck?
Well, there is a Tyranitar, you're right, that discards the top 4 of your opponent's deck. There's something out there that does that, right? But again, this is such a specific tool that like...
Yeah, Crackalanch, the first attack says discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So the Tyranitar played in Lugia. The second attack, discard cards from your own deck.
So like there are situations where this matters, but very
It's
rarely.
interesting. It's just like literally screw off control. But
Yeah.
Sean, the stadium that you were referencing earlier, Pokemon League headquarters, it makes the attack cost for each basic Pokemon in play, both you and your opponents, one colorless more. So if you're facing a Lost Box deck, right?
Yep.
That's tough, kid.
Yeah. 4 energy for that
They'll be
Dragonite?
playing a lot more stadiums and vacuums. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
I'm gonna Radiant
As if they're
Greninja
not
you.
already.
For 4? I don't think
For
so.
4? I don't know
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Chief. Yeah. Let's see here. Poppy is
Rhyme
bad.
is another card that people are very excited about, Sean.
It is. It's a draw 3 effect, which is nice. Stapled onto a bad Guzma. So or a bad boss. It's draw 3 bad boss.
I don't know. I mean, I think that this is not too terrible, personally.
I mean, I guess if you've got a really problematic Pokemon in the active, but so what it does, draw 3 cards, switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench, claws, your opponent chooses the new active. So that's why we're saying bad boss.
But here's the thing with effects such as like Cross Switcher in the format, if you want to hit that attacking Pokemon, but you need Cross Switcher to do a switch of your own, you can utilize Rhyme to force that Pokemon back into the active to go ahead and do a hit. Or, you know, earlier in the game, it can get the little Frigibacks, it can get a little Comfey, it can get a little Rolts, right, into the active spot that maybe they don't want if they had put the Chin Pow in the active or the Mew, right, the Celebrations Mew in the active to leave there to die. You can do a little bit of disruption from it. So I don't think Rhyme, I mean, yeah, the effect of your opponent choosing the switch is not as good as it could be, right? But
yeah.
I mean, boss is already so strong, so there's no reason to add a boss to a draw 3 on a supporter.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think this honestly, I think it just replaces Serena in any deck because Serena is always a card that gives you optionality, but it limits you to only Vs. The more EXs that come out, the less Serena probably is relevant. But if you're in a situation where you don't actually care what is being brought up, like say your opponent is trying to give you a Pokemon like a 1-prizer and you're like, I don't want to hit into that. Rhyme is perfect for that because if there's only 2 prizes in the back, you're like, I can take out whatever's back there. And then you get to draw 3 on top of it. So I could see this being like, if you're a kind of deck or if you're building a deck where like a Serena might make sense, try Rhyme instead.
I will say the last card that I want to talk about today, at least, is the very last tool card listed here, Vengeful Punch. When the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, put 4 damage counters on that Pokemon. And so we go back to Revavroom, Sean. Attached 4 Vengeful Punches on Revavroom, do 120 damage plus another 170 from Revavroom's attack. Also, King Gambit, the 4 damage counters is perfect for the knockout. So, I don't know, cheeky little card.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think this could be fun. I think like there could be a Revavroom deck that plays 4 Vengeful Punch, 3 Rocky Helmets, just anytime, or 4 Rocky Helmet. Anytime you hit into it, you're just taking a crap load of damage.
Yeah, you're just taking a bunch of damage, and that's that. I will say, compared to a lot of other cards, this one says that the Pokemon has to be knocked out by damage from an opponent's Pokemon. So it's not like, you know, if you hit Revavroom for 120 damage or 110 off the Cramorant, it's not like the Vengeful Punch activates. It's only if, you know, they Dragonite knock out you or something like that. I don't know. But
that's a good point.
And Sableye won't even affect it. So
that's true, because it's only attacks from damage done.
Yes. But
Jake,
that is our set review, Sean. Unless you have another card that you want to mention.
No, that was it.
I was going to say, there's no energies. There's no special energies in this set.
Yeah, no special. There was a stadium that lets you search for a tool. That's it. But like, honestly, that card, maybe if you're the Revolve deck, but otherwise, you're just giving your opponent access to Forest Sailstone, and that just feels bad. Feels like a bad idea. So I would say maybe that's not as played. But yeah, I think overall our set analysis at the very early in the pod, there's some really interesting cards here. I think this set is one where the interesting cards will see a lot of their value rise as more cards come out to support it. But the set as a whole probably isn't particularly strong.
I will say as well, I love the direction where the game is going with these cards. I love the new effects. I love the new cheeky things. I think there's, again, some cool Pokemon in this set that can provide a lot of fun opportunities in playing, especially alongside like friends and stuff. It's not insanely serious for competitive play. I think this set, aside from, maybe like a Charizard, I think it's going to be pretty cheap as well. I think you're going to be able to build decks from this and get cards from this pretty doggone cheap. And I think especially once the Charizard craze goes down, I feel like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for you to be able to get like a booster box or something of this for like a pretty good price in comparison to the past.
Yeah. I think we're coming back to reality, I think, with the prices of boxes and everything. And we'll see what 151 is like, Jake. Maybe that one is where all the money is going to go. But yeah.
I will say, for the record, I think it is more playable than Vivid Voltage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
I think Vivid Voltage was so bad in terms of playability, but I think this is a little bit better than Vivid Voltage.
Yeah.
Hopefully the cards are better. Yeah. Hopefully the cool polls are better. We will technically get more polls because if Pokemon continues with illustration rares, taking over the reverse holo slot, it will technically be more hits than Vivid Voltage. So by that alone, it might just be better than Vivid Voltage, which I think was the worst set in the Sword and Shield era besides Champion's Path.
Interesting. Okay.
Worst main set,
worst main set. Worse than Rebel Clash?
Yeah, I think Rebels Clash brought a lot of good cards.
Good cards.
Bosses Orders specifically.
For playability, yeah. You right.
Yeah.
All right, well.
At least Vivid Voltage had amazing rares.
That's true. At least
that was the saving grace of that set.
Jake.
Which didn't even get played until like the very end of their tenure, right before rotation. Anyway, Sean, I'll stop stalling. This is the end of the Metapod podcast, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. Hopefully you enjoyed our set list. Let us know what cards you're most excited about, and make sure to show us over on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, or Threads, or in the YouTube comments, or wherever, what you are pulling in your pre-releases if you plan on doing any this weekend. I'm Jake, that's Sean. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you later.